So justice, or at least accountability, came today in a Georgia courtroom when a jury convicted 3 white men of gunning down, murdering an unarmed black man, Ahmaud Arbery. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So let's talk about the verdict that was just handed down by a jury in a Georgia courtroom in the case involving the murder of an unarmed young black man named Ahmaud Arbery. The jury today convicted 3 white men, Travis McMichael, his father Gregory McMichael, and their friend William Bryan, of murdering Mr. Arbery. All 3 were convicted of some count of murder, and they are all now facing life in prison, perhaps with the possibility of parole, perhaps without. And this case, as we watch the evidence unfold, can only be described as these 3 men chasing down, trapping, and then executing the unarmed Mr. Arbery for having the temerity of basically jogging through their neighborhood. They tried to claim self-defense, but they had absolutely no viable self-defense claim on the evidence. Let's just kind of talk in no particular order about some of what we saw during the course of the trial, and then let's talk about where things might go from here. First of all, only one of the defendants testified, the gunman, Travis McMichael. And I don't think I've ever seen such an unconvincing direct examination of a defendant. Even under the friendly questioning of his own attorney, who put him on the stand, his self-defense claim didn't hold up. In a murder case where there is some hint of self-defense, there is this notion of who is the first aggressor, who provoked the situation. So if you're the first aggressor, then depending on how the evidence plays out, you may be deprived of even arguing that you killed someone in self-defense. And when you watched Travis McMichael's testimony, he said that he saw Mr. Arbery running through the neighborhood, suspected that he might have been involved in some prior crime or up to no good. No evidence of that, really. So he pulls his truck up next to him and demands that he stop so he can be questioned, interrogated, and perhaps so they could make a citizen's arrest for I don't know what, jogging while black. And what we heard was that Mr. Arbery, probably scared for his life, turned and started running in the other direction. What did Mr. McMichael do? He threw his truck in reverse and chased him in reverse. Mr. Arbery tried to evade by running in yet a third direction, and there was testimony that Mr. McMichael then turned his truck and tried to chase him down. You know, in this case, Mr. McMichael, the defendant, was the first aggressor, was the second aggressor, was the third aggressor, was the ultimate and only aggressor, together with his 2 co-defendants. And what they did, let's face it, they anointed themselves judge, jury, and executioner, and they killed the unarmed Ahmaud Arbery. They had no self-defense claim. And let's face it, the jury only deliberated a matter of hours before convicting them all of multiple counts, including murder. What happens now? Well, we have to wait for the sentencing in the case. A sentencing date hasn't been set yet, but let's remember there is a federal civil rights trial pending against these 3 men, and that's scheduled to begin in February. It may get delayed, but presently that federal civil rights trial for hate crimes is scheduled to begin in February. And some people may say, well, all of these defendants are now inevitably going to be sentenced to life in prison. Why should there be another trial against them? Because you can only confine a man for but one life? Well, because the different trials by the different jurisdictions are designed to vindicate very different rights. This was a murder trial in Georgia. This wasn't a hate crimes trial or a civil rights trial. And the federal trial is a hate crimes trial, a civil rights trial. And it will involve the question of whether these three men, the McMichaels and Mr. Bryan, committed these crimes against Mr. Arbery inspired by hate and prejudice, trying to deprive him and deny him of his civil rights, his right to simply jog through a neighborhood unaccosted by three racists in a pickup truck. That's what the federal civil rights trial is about. And frankly, I hope it does go forward. It may end up being resolved by guilty pleas. We'll see. But the other thing that will be accomplished in a federal civil rights trial is, look, all three of these defendants will appeal their convictions. Now, I didn't watch every moment of the trial, but I watched a good bit of it, and I didn't see any prejudicial error built into this trial that would result on any of these three defendants winning any sort of relief on appeal, having their Georgia state convictions overturned. But you never know. So if they are convicted in the federal civil rights trial, the hate crimes trial, you know what that will do? That will serve as appellate insurance, just in case their Georgia convictions are overturned and their cases are remanded for a new trial in the Georgia state court. I don't expect that will happen. Let's talk about some of the other aspects of the trial. The prosecutor, Linda Dunikoski, I hope I'm doing her name justice. I thought she was a public servant's public servant. You know, I tried a lot of murder cases. I supervised a lot of federal homicide prosecutors, and I was so impressed at the job she did, breaking down complex concepts so that she could convince all 12 people in the jury box, 12 people from all walks of life, of the righteousness of the evidence, of the persuasiveness of the state's cause against these three defendants. She really, I thought, did a remarkable job. And friends, you may not know, but people don't get into prosecuting for the money because it doesn't pay all that well. We don't get in it for the glory or the publicity because, frankly, we get criticized as prosecutors far more than we get complimented. I'd like to think that prosecutors, most of us, get in it because we like the idea and the mission of helping victims, of vindicating their rights, of protecting the community, and of honoring the rights of the defendant by making sure everything we do as prosecutors, we do on the up and up. We do it in accordance with the rules of law, the rules of evidence, and the constitutional rights of the defendant. And boy, Miss Dunikoski, I thought, was, as I say, public servant's public servant, and she did a masterful job of prosecuting this case. So yes, today we celebrate this jury verdict. We celebrate the accountability it brings. We celebrate the fact that it may actually move us in the direction of justice. But don't forget, friends, this case almost never made it to trial because the original district attorney responsible for the investigation tried to stop it dead in its tracks. There's her mugshot. Jackie Johnson, former district attorney who committed crimes to try to keep this case from ever going to trial. Here's the reporting about that from back in September from CBS News. Headline, former Georgia district attorney booked on charges of obstructing Ahmaud Arbery case. And that article reads in part, a former Georgia district attorney has been booked on charges linked to her alleged mishandling of the case of Ahmaud Arbery, a black man who was pursued and gunned down as he jogged through a Brunswick neighborhood. Ex-Glynn County District Attorney Jackie Johnson turned herself in to the Glynn County Sheriff's Office Wednesday morning after a grand jury returned an indictment of obstruction and violation of oath by a public officer last week. State prosecutors allege that she used her position to delay arrests of the white men who chased and killed the 25-year-old Arbery. Johnson was the county's top prosecutor when Arbery was fatally shot last year, and one of the armed men who pursued him had worked for her as an investigator. So friends, I think it's fair to say that we have miles to go on the justice front. But today, accountability. But during this holiday season, please keep in your thoughts the Arbery family, who will have one less plate at the table this Thanksgiving. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. I look forward to talking with you all tomorrow, and happy Thanksgiving.